It's a Monday, it's Mansfield today, and being a Monday, that means two things. Firstly, I'm usually full of sinusitis, which I am again this Monday. I don't know what it is about weekends. Maybe I shouldn't take weekends off because I always return full of sinusitis. And the second thing is we take a look at business with our business analyst, Chris Gibbons. Chris, two major stories this last week, the budget and the Ukraine crisis. Let's start local. What did you make of the budget?
Good morning, Jeremy. Well, it was very much as we expected. I was pleased to see the drop in the corporate tax rate as well as the bracket adjustment for individuals. Also good to see Minister Godongwana using some of the 200 billion rand in additional revenues going towards paying down debt. Confirmation, SAA will receive no more funding, although quite where that leaves the buyout with the Takatso consortium remains to be seen. But on the other hand, arms maker Denel did receive a further 3 billion to settle interest payments. Sasria, the Special Risks Insurance Group, awarded 22 billion as a result of last July's riots and looting. Looks set to get another 7 billion on top. The numbers flowing from those events last July really quite alarming for a country with such high unemployment and whose economy is so fragile. Land Bank still in trouble, another 5 billion rand there. In total, more than 308 billion rand has been directed towards bailing out failing state-owned companies. And from now on, they'll need to develop and implement sustainable turnaround plans. Their future will be informed by the value they create, and whether they can be run as sustainable entities without bailouts from the fiscus.
All I see when you talk about things like sustainable bailout plans or strategies is a bunch of alleged consultants sitting around rubbing their hands with glee, saying, "Ooh, we can get our money on some state money, yeah? Get our hands on some state money." The other one is, Chris, we've heard this all before so many times. We've heard it from Pravin Gordhan. Man, we can go back to Trevor Manuel, and we've heard the same thing.
Jeremy, the minister was very clear on the subject of the SOEs. They will be shown what he called tough love. But yes, I think you're right. And one entity which agrees is ratings agency Fitch, one of the big three that we depend on for our credit rating. Almost immediately after Minister Godongwana sat down, Fitch issued a statement saying, in essence, we don't believe you. Fitch doesn't think we're doing enough to contain rising debt and is worried that the revenue overruns are temporary. Fitch, you'll recall, downgraded our outlook from stable to negative in December last year. They believe that we will sooner or later implement a form of basic income grant. That, in turn, will lead government to breach its expenditure ceiling. And they're also concerned about government's ability to keep a lid on wages in the public sector. Put shortly, their message is simple. Government keeps promising to spend less, yet somehow never actually manages to keep that promise.
Okay, let's turn to the big international story, the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia. That one really spooked the international markets, didn't it?
Indeed it did, and doubly so by the announcement of very tough sanctions against Russia over the weekend, and then Moscow's response to place its nuclear forces on high alert. We've been anticipating the invasion for weeks, if not months, but when it happened, global stock markets dipped very sharply. In Moscow, the ruble-denominated MOEX down 33%, the dollar-denominated RTSI, also in Moscow, down 39%. European markets, London, Paris, Frankfurt, so on, all down around 4% to 5%. Similar drops, although not quite as steep in the US. Well, after all, the US doesn't actually face the prospect of Russian tanks rolling across the Atlantic anytime soon. So it's unsurprising, I think, that the Europeans would be a little bit more fearful. Oil went straight up to $104 a barrel. Gold went shooting up. Bitcoin dipped more than 10%. But then, and this is the oddly surprising thing in my view, on Friday of last week, about 2 days after the invasion, markets came roaring back. London up 4%, the Dow in New York up 2.5%, and so on. So what's going on here? Well, the cynical view is that the markets aren't sentimental. They see Ukraine falling to the Russians in fairly short order and a pro-Moscow puppet government being installed. So what? They say Ukraine has been run by Russian puppets for donkey's years. Nothing changed then. The world didn't come to an end. It's going to be the same going forward. It is a cynical view, but not good news for the Ukrainians, of course. But in one sense, we hope that they're right.
Do you agree with that sentiment?
Not necessarily, Jeremy. The problem with wars, and this is a war, make no error, they have a habit of escalating and exploding in completely unforeseen directions. The West has announced a string of sanctions against Moscow, including action against Russia's central bank, the removal of some of the country's lenders from the SWIFT international bank messaging system. SWIFT, of course, a crucial piece of international banking architecture, which allows payment in country A to show up as a receipt in country B. In practice, these latest sanctions are intended to make it well nigh impossible for Russian banks to receive payments for oil and gas exports and to prevent the Russian central bank from using its substantial reserves, international reserves, to boost liquidity. But in response, Russia, as I've said, has placed its nuclear forces on high alert. Western governments also cracking down on the so-called golden passports, which allow wealthy Russians to buy citizenship elsewhere. Russian airlines cut off from growing swathes of European airspace. There have already been runs on ATMs and banks in Moscow with people in search of cash, rubles, or dollars for fear of another collapse in the value of the already sharply weakened national currency, and the price of oil has also jumped. I also do not think that Vladimir Putin will stop at Ukraine. He's already said he wants a rollback of NATO from the states previously under Soviet control, the Baltics, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia, as it was back then. 4 of those states have already invoked NATO's Article 4, saying they are worried about their safety. Any kind of attack on a NATO state unlocks Article 5, and that pulls in the whole of Europe and the United States. Putin is now rattling his nuclear saber. Suddenly, we're in World War III territory.
Scary stuff indeed. But as you said about the Americans not worrying about Russian tanks rushing across the Atlantic, we're not really affected by what's happening in Europe. We're down on the southern tip of Africa. How is it going to affect ordinary South Africans?
Jeremy, you'll get the answer to that question later on this week when you fill up your petrol tank. Petrol goes up this week by R1.46 a litre, diesel R1.44, illuminating paraffin R1.21 per litre. That higher oil price is a direct result of what's going on in the Ukraine. Investors fleeing into safe havens, gold, of course, going up, all of that sort of stuff. The problem with the higher fuel price is that it ripples right through the economy, touching just about everything we buy. That is inflationary in an already inflationary environment, which means higher interest rates as we go along. Throw into the mix the fact that we import wheat from both Russia and the Ukraine. Those prices will go up, which means a higher bread price here. One benefit, as I said, people moving into the safe havens like gold. Gold is the classic. Higher gold price means higher profits for the gold miners, in turn higher tax revenues much further on down the line. Let's be clear, Ukraine may be a long, long way away, and we are certainly not immune from the effects of the war there, not by a long shot.
Okay, as you say, it affects the Russian economy, but it also affects the Europeans.
Yeah, interesting question, Jeremy. The answer is that really does depend on who you are and what you buy. As we've reported, the US, the Europeans, the Japanese have imposed sanctions on various Russian individuals, including President Putin. I doubt, frankly, he could care less about those. But the big ones are Russian oil and gas. Putin certainly won't want to give up on those revenues, but equally the Europeans, particularly the Germans, the Italians, won't want to give up their gas supply, especially in the middle of winter. Still winter in the Northern Hemisphere. Worth noting that despite the invasion, flows of Russian gas to Europe last week jumped 40%. So sanctions, yes, some are in place. Will they have the desired effect? That is very unclear, I think, at this stage.
Okay, well, let's stick with things related to energy. What's this story about a big new oil discovery just off Namibia?
This is a report from Fin24, Jem, which says Total Energy, the French company, big French company, has announced a giant oil discovery in the deep waters off the Namibian coast. It is the second big announcement in less than a month, and according to the report, could become sub-Saharan Africa's biggest ever oil discovery with a potential of more than 3 billion barrels of recoverable oil. Now, that would see Namibia become the third biggest African oil producer within about 10 years, could generate around 53 billion rand annually, every year, in revenues and taxes. That would be a very welcome boost indeed for the Namibian economy.
Oh, I can just see one times Gwede Mantashe, our Minister of Mineral and Energy Affairs, just almost waiting to explode over this sort of news.
I think he's quite close to that already, to be honest. Speaking in Mossel Bay this last week, Mantashe had another dip at the environmental lobby. He said that aspirations for South Africa to be what he called an island of angels when it comes to resource extraction will see us drift into poverty. Discoveries of gas in the Outeniqua Basin offshore of Mossel Bay is evidence we do have gas and possibly even oil, akin to those discovered off Mozambique and Namibia. But said the minister, we do have them, we can't touch them, because we are an island of angels. We are short-sighted in a big way, he said, and we are praised for that. Lobbyists, he added, cannot be permitted to frustrate investment through the court process to the detriment of the rest of South Africa's citizens. He noted the country's constitution provided guidance for the development of the country's resources in a manner that is not reckless and which protects the environment. We need to have that discussion, he said, how to balance protection of the environment and development of the economy. If we get that right, he said, we're going to be a great economy again.
Does he have a point there, Chris?
Well, he does, Jeremy, I think in the sense that the next couple of decades, in my view, are going to be about energy. Who controls which resources, who can sell that energy on to others? Witness the Russian situation right at the moment, Russian gas. And yes, despite the push to decarbonize, both oil and gas are going to be around for a long, long while yet, which is why companies like Shell, like Total Energy, still spending billions looking for new sources of supply. But it's equally fair, I think, to say that Mantashe's own department has been super short-sighted in its own approach towards developing our own new sources of supply. You know, we have acres and acres and acres of semi-desert land which gets hour after hour after hour of sunlight every single day, day after day, month after month. South Africa has the potential to be a world leader in solar energy. Where has the government been in pushing for that? What about the development of solar energy storage? Where has the government been in pushing for that? No, it's all been coal, coal, coal. Now it's gas, throw in some oil. And if you don't buy that vision, you're being short-sighted and you're an angel in this desert of angels. Finally, I should note that the government of Limpopo province has given the environmental green light to a China-backed proposal to spend more than $10 billion building a new 4,600 megawatt coal-fired power plant up in Limpopo, as well as a coking facility and a ferroalloy and a steel plant. Now, this is the establishment of the Musina Mercado Special Economic Zone in a desperately poor part of the country. Jobs are needed. The project is not factored into our emissions targets. It may still draw opposition from activists who say it will hammer thousands of baobab trees and also mean importing water from Zimbabwe, of all places. Will it fly at national government level? Jeremy, like so much else at the moment, I think that remains to be seen.
And that is where we're going to leave it as well. Chris Gibbons, our business analyst, thank you very much for your insight once again. We'll catch you once again next Monday. That's it from Mansfield today. For today, we'll catch you again tomorrow with The Legal Show with our advocate Lance Brogden. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.